Welcome to the Wednesday or September 18th, 2024 meeting of the Gaithersburg Planning Commission. We have two items tonight. First up is record plats for subdivision. Well, do you want to just read it in?
Sure.
Okay.
So one plat tonight, RP-9610-2023, which is for the One Central redevelopment project. This is associated with site plan SP-9556-2023. Staff has reviewed the plat and recommends your approval tonight.
Okay. Any questions on the subdivision? Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the record plat as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thanks, Greg. Does it look good? Is it a
It looks
good-looking
great.
plat? Okay. And then that takes us to our second and final item for the evening, which is a tree removal waiver for ENV-9927-2024 tree variances related to SP 9881-2024 Craftmark Homes at Metropolitan Grove. Presenting from staff is Rob Robinson.
Thank you, Commissioners, and good evening. As the Chair mentioned, this is a tree variance, which is the state's language for waivers, ENV 9927-2024. The applicant is seeking variances for the removal of trees greater than 30-inch DBH per state law in our local Chapter 22, and seeking a variance from a specific criteria related to variances. Included in your packet is a bunch of background information and a staff. I figured let's hear from the horse's mouth. So joining me this evening is Mr. Chris Malm from Craftmark Homes, who's really going to walk you through sort of what this request is and how we got here this evening.
Sounds good. Good
Thank
evening.
you, Rob. Good evening. Again, I'm Chris Malm with Craftmark Homes with the applicant. As you can see here, we've got on the screen our subject properties. What we're really talking about tonight is variance trees along the northern edge of the property line, which is the Stevenson property, where he's highlighting right now. Do you want to flip to the next one?
Sure.
So you guys will recall we've received sketch plan and SDP approvals for this project. Along with that was an original variance request, which included 31 trees. It came to light as we were working through the final site plan process that our original NRI FSD had expired. Just the length of time it took us to work through the complicated stuff in the site. And as we were updating it, it came to light that a swath of trees along the northern property line was missed. We don't know exactly why. We fully acknowledge it was an oversight on the part of us and our consultants. We assume that perhaps the property line was not properly marked, and as a result, the trees in blue, which should have been picked up on the original NRI FSD, were not.
And just to be clear, I kind of clarify for anybody wondering why that would be. Somebody goes out there and walks the site based on somebody else having put some stakes in the ground, right? So there is a human factor there. It's not like we can just take GIS and count trees, right?
And just to jump in, it wasn't just Craftmark. City staff missed it too when we went out to do the field review of the original NRI.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's important to point out that, on our initial SDP and sketch plan approvals, we clearly indicated the existence of a forest stand in the location of these trees along the northern property line. And we clearly indicated to everybody that that forest stand was going to get removed. And so there was never any confusion about that. What we missed is that within that forest stand along the very northern property line, there existed 17 variance trees which need to get removed as part of our development and should have been included in the original variance letter. Now, this is a big mistake, and we don't doubt that. But the other thing I'll point out is, we believe that had these 17 additional trees been accurately included from the beginning, it likely wouldn't have changed the result because in our original variance request probably would have still been approved because it's all located within the same forest stand. So the justification of removal for these trees would be the same. And not to minimize the mistake, we recognize it was one, but I think everybody knew that this area was going to get cleared. The other thing I just wanted to point out, because I recognize our final site plan is only a couple months behind, and during discussions with staff, they're like, well, why are you bringing this forward now? Why don't you just marry it up and bring it all together? And I thought the answer to that question would be something you may want to understand. The reason that we push this ahead of final site plan has to do with our closing schedule for the property. Well, we already purchased the two Stevenson parcels. We were scheduled to close on the remainder of the assemblage in late July. And late July is around the time that this oversight came to light. And we were always planning on using a traditional bank loan to finance this project. And we made certain representations to our bank about the approvals we were going to have in hand. One of those approvals is, hey, we're going to have all the approvals for our variance tree removals done. And when we realized that wasn't the case, we said, okay, we're going to delay settlement here, but we're going to try to get this sorted out as soon as possible. So we accelerated this tree variance request ahead of our final site plan, which is why we're here talking to you tonight about just that and not the rest of the final site plan. And in terms of just to explain the color coding of what you're looking at now, the green trees were trees that were properly included on our original tree variance. The blue trees are on-site variance trees that should have been included, but were not, and we just recently picked them up. And the two red trees are off-site trees that critical root zones are impacted enough that we worked with city staff on it. We said, hey, look, guys, we're concerned about the health of these trees. What can we do? They're suggesting that we remove them at our expense so it doesn't become an issue for the city later. But we've proffered to replant or make a contribution to replant trees at was it a 5-to-1 ratio. We regret that this mistake happened, but we're trying to do what we can to make it right.
Within your packet, there's an exhibit that has some photographs. So city staff went out with the applicant's team to look at the ability to, as I mentioned in the staff report, replant in the same place. Obviously, poplars with the way they are, the density that's out there and the way their roots are growing, there's no opportunity for that. So that's why we were accepting of, essentially the cash contribution equivalent of 5-to-1 mitigation for these two trees. As I mentioned, those two trees are what require that specialized variance from the criteria because their removal is a result of what's going on Mr. Malm's property. But we do feel, as I mentioned in the staff report, that the hardship and the practicality issue has been met. Again, the applicant has the ability under state law, to prune to the property line, but trying to be a good neighbor, and they have essentially our approval. Instead of waiting for something that potentially could be an issue down the road that then the city would be financially responsible for, we feel this is something that is worth, as we said, we recommend this variance. It's not something common. We're not out to circumvent the criteria for variances, but this is a unique case. As I mentioned in the staff report, we haven't had this situation in the 10+ years that's been on the books. This is the first time.
Yeah. One of the other comments I just add, and you probably implied it, and you showed it in the opening photo, aerial photo, even though the plot of those trees, or the plat of those trees, I don't know, the siting of those trees on the application stops at the property line plus the two that the city are on the city side. There is a really healthy buffer of trees around beyond that. So in terms of enjoyment for the folks that will eventually live in that neighborhood and for buffering from the interstate, there's a reasonable assumption that there's a good body of trees left for all of that to happen. So it's not as if you're taking it out to the very edge of what the stand is. And the exhibit's a little misleading because it only shows the trees you're dealing with and not what's beyond. But the photo, the aerial photo does that. So
Yeah.
it's worth mentioning in terms of impact, I think. Just bring us up to speed because it's been a while. The reforestation or the forestation requirements for this change, don't change, there are none? It's
No, so
cash in lieu?
variances technically don't have any impact upon forest conservation because that's the worksheet. So none of those numbers change.
Okay.
I think as Mr. Malm brought up, though, it's just important to know and included in your packet was the preliminary forest comp plan that clearly showed all this area was to be cleared regardless. This is just a technicality under the code that, as Frank and I have talked about, was sort of required of all jurisdictions by the state. We're not really even happy with the way the language was written, but that's what they signed off on. So in many ways, this is a technicality. And again, I think we included this one exhibit. So for example, you can see right here where I'm hovering over, the distance between a tree that received a previous variance and one that was missed is, about 7 feet. So it's not like we're talking about an entire area that was never shown, to be removed or that we didn't know existed. I mean, it's, these are trees that were within the same stand and in oftentimes in incredibly close proximity. So as alluded to, had we not both sides been able to catch this under the original NRI, these would have been included under the SDP.
Okay. That's good. Any other questions? presentation?
Seems.
A recommendation?
All right, I'm going to ask if anyone wants to comment on this from the public online. So let me check if any hands go up. It didn't flip. There we are. Okay, so we do have a hand up from David Mullins. Tech team, I haven't done this from this room yet, so make sure we're connected. There we go. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, I appreciate it. Just David Mullins. I live at the Gateway Apartments, just right here, next to the property in question. And yeah, I look. I mean, I ran through the agenda packet, and it just seems like it's this whole unprecedented thing about the error and things. I get that, but then it seems like a lot of the justification for just approving this is because it would have been included before and this kind of thing. And I don't know. I attend the environmental committee meetings, and the staff liaison there is very candid about how we could have different tree conservation paths here. And you have at least one council member who seems to publicly lament every tree that's lost. This is just an area where when you're driving down 270 from north, I mean, already it's one of the few places where it's just so blatantly visually obvious that trees were killed here. Like this was done and this line. And so it seems somewhat significant. I'm not trying to get all Lorax here, but it just seemed like someone needed to say something that we love the trees. We know you're trying to build. These people know that I come out. I'm pro housing. I support them, but like it's just a lot of trees and it's beautiful and it's hard because we see them every day. We live right here. So I had to say something. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so let's see. I don't see any other hands up or anybody on the call, and there's nobody here in chambers that looks like they want to say anything. So what's the recommendation, please?
Staff recommends that the Planning Commission make a motion to grant the requested variances for ENV 9927-2024, finding them in conformance with Section 2212 of the City Code and based upon the findings presented in the staff report, with one condition as presented, and I'm happy to read that because it is a short one. Applicant to provide a financial contribution to the city's Forest Conservation Fund equivalent to the costs of 10 2-inch caliper large shade trees prior to the issuance of any site development permits.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the recommendation? I will say, and to echo a little bit about the public testimony, it is always, we do need to be careful, and I think it's appropriate to just pause a little bit when these sorts of requests come in to take trees that are at least fairly naturally occurring. A lot of this was replanted, I think, at one point 40 or so years ago, but nevertheless, they're there. I'm encouraged by the fact that there's still quite a few left to buffer this neighborhood, which is not what happened after the Watkins-Miller change was brought through. That was unfortunate to a much higher degree. And I know that as a city, we're committed to seeing these at least balanced, if not specifically replanted in the same place, but it's certainly a balance in the forestation plans that come up. So it's unfortunate the mistake was made. I tend to agree with staff's analysis that the conceptually, when we looked at the site plan and assumed that the trees that were within that boundary and where that site plan, that the STP was developed, that we were assuming that would have to be regraded and therefore cleared of trees to make that happen. So this becomes, I don't want to say a technicality because that kind of brings it down too much, but the idea that the inventory that explained what was inside that boundary was incorrect the first time doesn't really change the intent of the STP the first time, I don't think. I mean, the way I read it. I don't know. Anybody has any?
Or potentially even the sketch.
Or sketch plan, sure,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But one builds on the other. So essentially that whatever the preliminary you want to cite. So I don't see a huge hurdle to apply to approving this waiver, so.
No, I would tend to agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Or variance,
And in light of the fact that the applicant is also in a financial bind right now based on the fact that this variance needs to be approved, I would like to go ahead and grant the motion.
Any other comments?
There's no need for us to stand in the way.
Okay. All right, is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Planning Commission grant the requested variance for ENV 9927-2024, finding them in conformance with Section 22-12 of the City Code, and based upon the findings presented in the staff report with the one condition as written into the record.
Second?
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks very much, Rob, for
Thank
putting
you.
that together. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Good luck and do what you can to add more trees.
Absolutely.
If you end up with an extra parking island with an extra side yard, by all means, put a tree there. Thank you.
Thanks.
And I don't mean that in a flip way. I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's-
I believe you.
lean on your landscape folks to find other ways to do it. All right, from the commission, Danny, may I start with you?
Two things. It was great to hear from a community member. You know, we love to hear from them, and we encourage them to give their feedback to what's going on in the city. So it was great to hear that, Gentleman, Mr. Mullins. So I'm always going to give my pitch about the upcoming joint Maryland APA and MPCA conference. And again, it's the conference is APA Maryland. And, you know, it's our theme is 2 tracks, 1 destination. And as you all know, it's going to be on October 20th to the 22nd. And early, we have early bird pricing until Friday. So get your get your registration in, and you'll save a few dollars. I'm looking forward to seeing lots of folks there. I'll certainly be there, and of course, others around the room will be there, I'm hoping. So looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Excellent. Thank you. Hope to be there too. Lloyd, anything tonight?
Yes, I'd like to thank the mayor and the city council for reappointing me to another term on the planning commission.
Oh, they didn't get my letter.
It's been a real pleasure serving the city in this capacity, and look forward to another several years being on the commission.
Nice going.
Good,
Congratulations.
good for
Welcome
you.
back.
Congratulations.
Phil, anything tonight?
Nope, nothing.
Okay. All right, so staff, who wants to chime in?
I will just provide a reminder, your next meeting is Tuesday, October 1st. So it is a little different than normal.
Joint, what is that?
Our regular meeting, sorry. Planning Commission's
Tuesday,
next
okay.
regular meeting is Tuesday, October 1st.
Okay,
Right,
okay.
right. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, send a note to the commission just to remind them.
Yeah, I have not polled yet. I will be sending that
Okay,
email shortly.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's coming up quick, and that would be a little curveball for some
Yep.
folks maybe. Okay, excellent. Anything tonight, Rob? Thanks for being here.
Good to see you.
Good
Frank,
seeing
anything
you, my
tonight?
friend.
Nothing from me.
All right.
I will be at the conference that Danny mentioned, giving the open meetings training for
Yes,
anybody
he will.
who's interested.
Good
And
enough.
we appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. If there's nothing else, have a good evening, and we're adjourned.
So Danny, Rockville staff, they're redoing their zoning ordinance, and of course they're biting all stuff. They are now